Well, welcome everybody to our webinar, Understanding the Experiences of Yazidi Youth. My name is Charlotte Finnegan, and I'm going to be one of the presenters today. I'm also joined by Dr. Jason Brown from Western University, Dr. Mohammed Aladimi from the South London Neighbourhood Resource Centre, and a few of our Yazidi community members. So we have Delvine, Faiza, and Asia joining us today. So I will just ask everybody to please input your questions in the Q&A feature, and you can do this throughout the presentation. So put your questions in at any time, but we will be answering all of these at the end. So if you're looking for the Q&A feature, you can just find it at the bottom of your screen. So this is just a quick overview of our workshop today. So we'll start with an introduction where we'll talk about the university community partnership between Western University and the South London Neighbourhood Resource Centre. We'll give you some background information on South London, on migration, and on the Yazidi refugees. Following this, the bulk of our presentation is going to be around our current research project. So we're going to talk about the need for this research, the findings from our 3-phase study, and then we'll be joined by our Yazidi community members and we'll hear directly from them. And then at the end, we will finish off with a Q&A period. All right, so this brings us to the introduction. So I'm going to hand it over to Mohammed, who's going to begin this part.
Hi, everybody. As Charlotte mentioned, my name is Mohammed Aladimi, and I'm the Director for the Newcomer Settlement Services at the South London Neighbourhood Resource Centre. And I would like to talk a little bit about the partnership that we have with the University of Western Ontario. And this is a community and research based partnerships that we have nurtured and developed for almost a decade. Started, I remember, since 2011. Our organization continued to build these partnerships with Western University, initially with also with Professor Vicky SS of the Department of Psychology, and continued throughout with Professor Jason and of the Department of Education of Western University. Our role is mainly to support and facilitate this community-based research to understand and better support newcomers in London. The results of the research are shared with our organization, and this is something wonderful to have. We provide direct services to our clients, we create programs and services, but having this knowledge-based information has assisted us to really create evidence-based programs and services. And this has been used extensively, especially when we receive newcomers to London. We often implement these recommendations also that come up with the research that is completed. The reports are shared with our organization, and so this is of course, the students also benefit from the programs and services that we have, and so that they can carry on their research. So this is a two-way kind of understanding, as well as working together as a team, so that everybody benefits from the partnership. One thing that I have also realized is that the information that we get that normally our frontline workers don't have access with regard to the review of the literature that is provided by the researchers has been very helpful. We also have, we were able to educate the non-settlement agencies about the evidences that we have received from the research that was extensively focused on the people that we serve. Okay, back to you, Jason.
Thanks, Mohammed. Yeah, so just to show you on the next slides here that some of the projects that we've been working on together. And as Mohammed said, we started in 2011, and I still remember that project, Mohammed. We had the families come in from the community, and we did some separate focus groups with the youth and with the parents, and then we brought everybody together to talk about it. And the point of the project was to talk about, you know, what are the things that help and promote a healthy community in the catchment area for South London, which is a very large part of the city of London. From that project, a couple of students did their master's theses. In a couple of years later, we got some funding from the university to revamp a course on cross-cultural counseling, and Mohammed and South London were hugely supportive and hugely helpful in that way. So we had students coming out and doing some projects for that course with the center on topics that were relevant to them. The next one is just a quick one of a focused project that a master's student did in 2016 around looking at identity issues. And then just sort of scrolling over to the next one. In 2017, we did a big evaluation that South London and the other community centers were doing to help bring together the Syrian refugees who were all across the city. And it was a big project, and we're really happy to be, you know, connected to it. We were just on the outside and inside, I guess, but collecting information mostly. We didn't do any of the legwork that made that thing happen. That was crazy big and awesome. And then a year later, we had another student come in and do her thesis. And today, this is where Charlotte's going to talk about her doctoral research, which follows up on her master's research that she did a couple of years ago. So it's just been phenomenal, and it's the longest partnership I've ever been associated with. And Mohammed and I have known each other the whole time, so it's been pretty cool that way. We haven't had a lot of changing people coming in and out, and that's all for me. I'm going to turn it back over to Mohammed, who will introduce this video.
Thank you, Jason. You took us back to previous. It's been wonderful working with you, Jason. So today, I'm using this opportunity to share with you a video that we have created about the Yazidis that we have been serving in our community. We have been working with the Yazidis for for about 5 years, I could say. And so we thought of culminating our project by putting together a video focusing on the Yazidis in London. So Charlotte, can you start the video, please?
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Nancy Needham. I'm the Executive Director for the South London Neighbourhood Resource Centre. And today we're really excited to share with you about a project of support that we have for newcomers here in South London. The Neighbourhood Resource Centre is located in the South London Community Centre and the Jelna Branch Library. This location is such a great, fantastic location for our newcomer community to come to the centre to enjoy our services we have through the Neighbourhood Resource Centre, but also to join the activities that are happening from our partner agencies like the City of London, the library, and other partners in the community. We also encourage and welcome newcomers to continue on in that journey and join other activities that are here at the center. We have the YMCA that offers language classes, as well as Thames Valley District School Board. We have early on programs for preschoolers, an emergency food system for those who are in need, and of course our extensive settlement services and our youth services. You as a newcomer can come and volunteer at the center. You can come and share your voice as to what matters to you in your community. A neighborhood resource center is the place for newcomers to come and really become part of their community and their new home in our London region. So we're pleased to be able to share that experience with you today.
Awesome. So that brings us to understanding a little bit more about the migration trends. So over the last 3 decades, there's been a surge in international migration. So more recently here in North America specifically, we see that migration to North America has increased by 3 million since 2015. And this has been influenced in part by the fact that we've experienced an increase in economic growth and activity over the last 3 decades. However, unfortunately, displacement events such as conflict, violence, war, and natural disasters are also at a record high, and this has led to an increase in displacement driving migration. So what all of this means here in Canada is that 1 in 5 individuals are immigrants, 13% of whom are considered refugees, and 40% of these refugees are children. So today our presentation will be focusing on a very specific group of refugees, the Yazidis. So to begin, we're just going to listen to another little clip from the video where Mohammed provides an excellent overview of the Yazidi population and their experiences.
My name is Mohammed Al-Adimi, and I'm the Director of the Newcomer Settlement Services at the South London Neighbourhood Resource Centre. In this video, I would like to share with you about our experience with regard to the resettlement and integration of Yazidis. I would like to thank Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada for the financial support. To begin, the Yazidis are ethnic and religious minority, mostly from Iraq. They are about 800,000 to 1 million worldwide. They were subjected to persecution for centuries because of their religion. The latest persecution happened in August 2014 when they were attacked by ISIS, and more than 7,000 have been killed and 350,000 have been displaced. In 2016, the Canadian government passed a motion to give asylum to some of the survivors of ISIS. As of March 2018, about 1,200 Yazidis arrived to Canada. Of these, 350 Yazidis settled in London. When they arrived, most of them had moderate to severe physical and mental health issues. The majority were single mothers and with children. Our experience with the resettlement of Yazidis is different from previous groups of refugees who came to London, in that they were moved into Canada within a short period of time from the captivity of ISIS.
So the Yazidi individuals are a distinct category of highly traumatized refugees. They've experienced severe and prolonged exposure to violence. In fact, the 2014 attack, which was committed by ISIS, was the 74th recorded attack against the Yazidi population. The cruelties of this attack are truly unimaginable, but they include things like mass killings, particularly of the Yazidi men, extreme violence, such as torture and enslavement of Yazidi women and children. The Yazidi women and youth experienced extreme sexual violence, and the boys were kidnapped and trained as child soldiers. And not only have these individuals experienced these things directly occurring to themselves, they've also witnessed these things happening to family members and friends. So there are many characteristics that distinguish Yazidi refugees from other populations of refugees, some of which Mohammed highlighted in his previous video. But just to identify a few more. So one, the significant intergenerational trauma that they've experienced really sets them apart. So Yazidi refugees are impacted by their own direct experiences with trauma as associated with the 2014 attack, but also generations of intense trauma experienced by their ancestors. The Yazidi individuals were also internally displaced within Iraq and resettled to Canada within weeks. In comparison to other refugees who can wait on average 12 years between fleeing their country and being accepted for permanent residence somewhere else. The age and gender distribution of Yazidi refugees also distinguishes them. So upon arriving to Canada, 70% of Yazidi refugees were those under the age of 30, and the majority of them were women and children because the genocide focused on killing men. Yazidis are less likely to have formal education than some other groups of refugees. And this is in part due to their language, Kurmanji, not being an officially recognized language. So this means that there is no formal education, which results in many Yazidis being functionally illiterate. And the extreme trauma and persecution that they've experienced has resulted in excessive rates of mental health problems among this population. So now we're just going to watch one more clip from the video that outlines the South London Neighbourhood Resource Centre's approach to supporting Yazidi refugees.
From the captivity of ISIS. Our approach towards the resettlement and integration of Yazidis was based on a 360-degree support and guidance in order to enhance their integration in the community, welcome them, and provide a safe environment, as well as connect them with other Yazidis, familiarize them with Canadian culture, assist them to develop and build new skills, facilitate programs that are accessible, improve overall health and well-being, and also encourage and empower them to be independent. In spite of all the challenges, the Yazidis have displayed great resilience. They made a great progress in their resettlement and integration, made new connections, improved their language and other skills, improved their health and well-being. We have seen increased abilities in that they learned more about life in Canada. They were able to navigate and access the system better to get appropriate services and programs that are available, and some were able to secure employment. In conclusion,
and now I'm just going to hand it back over to Mohammed for a few minutes, and he's going to talk a little bit more about this 360 approach to supporting Yazidi refugees.
We have put together a strategy, that is based on the studies that we have done. We did a lot of research about the Yazidis, and within a short period of time, we were able to have a staff who will work directly with the Yazidis the moment they arrive in our community. Our center has welcomed in the past several other newcomers, and as they reside in the neighborhoods, we consider them as our residents, and we make sure that the newcomers, based on their needs and the assessments that we do, we focus more on their needs as well as on their capacities and skills, and making sure that they are well informed about the new community that they are living in. They have a full support of a settlement counselor who sits with them and create a short-term plan based on their capacity to follow up. And there is also the Yazidi focusing on the staff who will connect with overall issues that the whole family needs, whether they are the children or the youth or the women, as well as the men, looking into their physical wellness, and as well as the psychological wellness. We work directly with CMHA, with the Intercommunity Health Center, making sure that they get the services and the support they need. We're also making sure that they learn the English language as soon as possible. We, of course, they join the ESL classes, but on a regular basis, they are provided with opportunities to learn English for daily life, that when they go into the community, they know how to address, just making sure that they lead to be independent. And then gradually we were able to put together a lot of other programs related to skills development. CMHA had a very specific program for empowering women, and that has been tailored to be used for the Yazidis, and it's become, it was well received and supported the Yazidis to be more taking care of their families and health as well. We had lots of ongoing programs that are directly linked to providing trauma-informed programs, whether that's yoga or mindfulness. And we are so lucky, and we could say that our Yazidis in London were so lucky to have some of the wonderful experts who came and volunteered to our organization. These experts normally, some of them, they have their own businesses, but rather they prefer to come and volunteer and support the Yazidis insofar as, for example, they provided them with trauma-informed care and how to use mindfulness, using as well as art as a therapy in order to give them time and place to express, the fears that they had, with the support of a psychotherapist as well. An art therapist was also involved. And so I could say we consider that as a 360 degrees support that we are provided. But to tell you the truth, we were not only just providing, spoon feeding and trying to give them all they need. The whole objective was to empower them, engage them into activities. And they found a very good hub, which is our center, that dealt not only for different needs, but also we at the center provide so many other activities that are that is offered to the residents in general. So they can access the food bank, for example, they can access the gym, the programs that are offered through the City of London or other partners as well. So in a very short period of time, they were able to move forward, not only having all these programs, that we call 360 degrees in the center, but rather also they were coming to us and say, oh, can we go on a trip? Can we go and see, for example, go to the beach or have an event in the center to celebrate, their annual celebrations, their dances, and also. So we created all this, we facilitated for them, but they were the ones who were driving, the driving force in moving forward. So that was the initial seed project we started, but now they have become so successful in many areas that we are so happy to see that all these outcomes happening for our Yazidi residents. Back to you, Charlotte.
Awesome. Thank you, Mohammed. So now the rest of our presentation is going to focus on the research that we've done together. So all of this information leads us to understanding the problem and the need for further research. So the significant persecution and harm experienced by Yazidis was known by the government when they were invited to resettle into Canada. The government of Canada identified Yazidis as a vulnerable group, And they've made recommendations for housing, support, and asylum based on this. However, since arriving to Canada, the Yazidis have mostly only had access to the same basic support as other refugees, which is called the support promised by the government into question. And what we know is that survivors of extreme circumstances and persecution require extreme assistance, but it would appear that the needs of Yazidi refugees are not being adequately supported. And this is in part because their needs, particularly the needs of the youth, are not well understood. So when we look in the literature, the research so far has mostly been conducted immediately following displacement. So this could include, when the Yazidis were internally displaced, when they were living in refugee camps, or immediately after arriving in Canada. And it's mostly focused on the perspective of the women or the service providers. And all of this research so far has been conducted using traditional research methodologies. So this brings us to our research, which was a 3-phase study where we sought to understand Yazidi youth's perspective on their mental health experiences and needs as associated with their adjustment to life here in Canada. And we used maybe more of a non-traditional approach to research. And in this approach, our research is conducted with the community instead of on the community. So we accomplished this in many different ways. So as the primary researcher, I really embedded myself within the population and the organization. So I've had the privilege of working with South London for about 5 years now, and working with the Yazidi population specifically for about 3 years. In doing so, I've had the opportunity to attend and help with various different programming that was going on. But mostly, I think through this experience, I've gotten to know the women, the children, and the families, and I've become a familiar face and somebody who they know is there to support them. Another way that we've done research with the community is that we've collaborated with our partners at South London from the very beginning. So it was actually Mohammed from South London who identified this need for research with the Yazidi youth. And he helped to develop some research questions that were going to be directly related to the needs of this community. So this is different than traditional research where, we as the researchers would come in wanting to work with a certain population and having some predetermined research questions that we were wanting to answer. And lastly, our research design, which we're going to get a little bit more into, has been a big factor in how we've accomplished this. So our first 2 studies are what we call concept mapping activities. So here our youth participants not only generate the data through interviews, but they're also a part of analyzing the data. So they're actually like the driving force behind the analysis through something that we call a sorting activity. And our last research study that we're going to talk about today was the creation of an art project. And again, with this art project, the youth really had the autonomy to decide what kind of art project they would like to do, what they would like the use of this project to be, and where they would want this displayed and the information shared. So by doing research with the population and not on them, it's our hope that we've helped to empower the youth and their direct community while also working to increase the support that they're receiving. So I'm now going to walk you through the findings from our study. So this, our first 2 studies, as I mentioned, were group concept mapping studies. So the data was collected concurrently for both of these. And what we did was we did individual interviews with all of our youth participants. And then we had them participate in that sorting activity where they were given all the de-identified statements from their interviews and asked to sort them in any way that made sense to them, and also to create some labels that identified why they sorted them in those ways. And what we did was we used these, all of this information, we put it into our software system that did the whole final analysis. And then we used the labels generated by the youth to come up with our final labels, like what you see here. So our first research question was, what factors have hindered your adjustment to life in Canada? So what's made it hard to adjust to life here? And the youth generated a total of 73 unique statements and 7 concepts, the ones you see here on the screen, were chosen to best represent this data. So I'm just going to walk you through quickly what each of these concepts are and the type of information that was found within them. So the first was family stress and adjustment. So here our youth participants identified that having a big family was stressful, particularly having a big family with no father. And this often meant that the youth had to take on additional responsibilities at home. It also made it hard to find housing and accommodations. And it can also be really hard for them to get used to living with their immediate family again, because many of these youth were separated from their family for a period of time during the migration process. The second concept is what we called the experience of instability and fear. So the statements within here identified that the youth were having unstable financial circumstances. They were very concerned for the safety of their loved ones, particularly those who are still missing and still in camps. And in some statements, they described that there were parts of their life from when they were in Iraq that they really loved and that they were missing since coming here to Canada. The third concept is navigating the difference between countries. So this just included all the things about navigating being here in Canada. So things like learning the new language, a new set of rules and social norms. And this was really hard for the youth, particularly they identified because there was a lack of effective support to help them. The fourth concept is starting over. So here the youth identified that there were many things that they themselves and their family members had to learn. And this was hard because they didn't know the community and the people, the culture, the language. So not only was this hard for themselves, but it was hard for their families. And also what made it challenging is that this learning how to start over was happening at different rates for everybody and their family. So particularly some of the youth and children learned the language a lot quicker than their parents did. The sixth concept was getting used to school, the fifth. So here the youth identified that there was, lots of factors about school that were challenging. So for one, they had a lack of language, and they also had a lack of previous formal education. And all of these things made it really hard to keep up with the subjects at school and also to engage with the other students. The sixth concept was the impact of war. So really all the youth had mentioned that they continue to be impacted by their experience of war and the intrusive memories that are associated with this. So they talked about being fearful of reminders of the war. So things like seeing ISIS on TV and the coverage of what was happening. And that they also really acknowledged that the experience of war had a really deep impact on them. So it made them feel physically ill, and it's really aged them beyond their years. And the last concept here is what we called my own discomfort. So here the youth described just feelings of being scared of school, and that it was really challenging to make new friends and to integrate. So this brings us to our second study, which again happened concurrently with the first. And the main question for this study was what factors have promoted your adjustment to life in Canada? So in other words, what's been helpful? And here the youth generated a total of 54 unique statements. And again, we used 7 concepts to best represent this data. So in the first concept, we called this experiences at school. So the youth found it very helpful to have the opportunity to attend school full-time. They mentioned that there was a lot of learning opportunities that happened at school, so particularly around learning the language. And they also made note of just exceptionally supportive staff who made the experience of going to school feel very positive overall. Connection with friends and family was another helpful factor that promoted their adjustment here. So for one, this was, reunification and being together with their family here in Canada. And also just making new connections through the new friendships that they were making. The third concept is the idea that accepting that it takes time. So this concept centered around the idea of developing patience and how this was really helpful to their adjustment. So accepting that it takes time to build skills like learning the language, and that just remembering, that life in Canada brought so much hope for themselves and their future, and knowing that that process might take some time as they acculturate here. The fourth concept was a sense of security. So the youth described a sense of security from having their needs met. So this included like their physiological needs, like their need for food, their safety needs, such as having financial security here, and their need for love and belonging that came from having these connections with others. Community agency support was another concept. So the youth identified that the initial settlement supports were very helpful. Having access to some particular supports like a mentor or a translator. And above all, the team at South London was mentioned time and time again for the wonderful support that they've provided and just the way that they've made the youth and their families feel connected and welcomed. The sixth concept was feeling liberated. So this was that a sense of liberation came from being freed from the war and living in captivity. And also just from having this safe home and community here in Canada was a really freeing experience. And the youth also talked about the fact that finding refuge in Canada allowed them to have new experiences and connections that they wouldn't have had otherwise. And our last concept was feeling like I belong. So the youth mentioned how community support and involvement made them feel like they belonged here in Canada. So this included, both the formal supports and services from things like doctors and the government, but also the informal support that they received from neighbors and friends, and particularly from being connected to the Yazidi community here in London. So this brings us to our final study, and then we'll hear from our Yazidi community members. So our final study, the youth were consulted on what type of art project they would like to complete and where they would like to have this displayed. So the youth chose a photo voice study. So using Polaroid cameras, they were asked to take pictures that represent their migration and integration challenges, their migration and integration successes, and the support they still require. And then the youth came back together and they shared these pictures and they worked as a group to decide what final pictures they wanted to share and how they wanted to caption these pictures. So on the next few slides, we'll see the frames that they've made. And I do apologize. It's very hard to get a good picture of these, so you can see me in the background of all of the frames. So this first one is just an introductory slide. So it basically is just summarizing what I described in the last slide. This is what they chose to represent their migration and integration challenges. So for starters, they had a picture that represented language because they didn't know the language, which made it hard to connect with others. The second photo was of the weather because the climate was really different here, so it was hard to adjust and made it hard to get around. The third photo was around citizenship. So they talked about the fact that obtaining citizenship is hard and it takes a lot of time and money. And it's also very restrictive when you don't have your citizenship because you feel really trapped here. School was the fourth photo. So they had mentioned it was hard to learn because of the language barrier and the lack of previous formal education. And they also felt that the teachers were not always helpful and supportive. The rules made it hard because it was hard to learn the formal and informal rules here, like traffic lights and the social rules and all of those things. Getting around was hard because it's hard to figure out how to navigate a new environment. The weather impeded their ability to get around, and It's hard to get a Canadian driver's license and also expensive. And the last challenge was people. So not everyone was kind, and they were met with some forms of discrimination and bullying. The next frame represented their successes. So here the youth chose a picture of reading to learn. So they had mentioned that books helped them with the language development and to gain knowledge. The language was another piece. So English mastery not only gave them the freedom and independence that they were looking for, but it also allowed them to support their families and their communities. Technology was a third component. So here, technology has supported them to learn new skills, complete schoolwork, apply for jobs, and access information that they needed. People have also been another factor in their success. So others have given them connection, support, and information. And again, the South London Neighbourhood Resource Centre comes up because they've helped them with the practical things and also helped them to process their past experience and give them connection to others. So lastly, our final frame was around the support they still required. So some of this was around like doctors and dentists. So they had said that they'd experienced some negative experiences with health and dental care providers, like racism or being denied services. So improvement in this area is needed. Support was another huge piece, and I think really the bulk of what they wanted to get across here. So I do want to read one caption here word for word, and it read, "We need support to educate others on the genocide and what happened to the Yazidis in Iraq. And what the Yazidis in Iraq are still dealing with right now. We need support to tell our stories of what happened to us, what ISIS did to us, and why. It's important because we still have family living in this war every day. And there are girls, women, and boys still in captivity or being forced to be ISIS soldiers. There are men still missing, and we do not know if they are alive." I think that this particular caption really emphasizes the support that the youth are looking for. And this is really actually not support for themselves, but it's support for their community, so for their family and friends still in Iraq. And they really just want others to know what's happened so that more support can be rallied to help those still in Iraq. And the last piece of support still required was around the center. So the youth really wanted continuous Yazidi-specific programming for themselves. They want programming that is around some more advanced skills. And they also want continued programming for their mothers, because this helps their moms get out of the house and engaged, and also helps to alleviate some of the pressure on the youth to provide that support to their moms. So that brings us to the end of our research. So now we are very lucky to be joined by 4 special guests. So we have Khalida, Delvine, Faiza, and Asia. So Khalida couldn't be here live today, but we do have a recording of her video. Khalida is a case management coordinator at South London who works with the Yazidi clients at the center, and she's also Yazidi herself. Delvine is the community connection worker at the center. So she's been involved in our university community partnership in many ways. So previously as a participant in some of our past research, and now as a support worker at the center. And she is also Yazidi herself. And Faiza and Asia are both Yazidi youth who participated in all 3 phases of our research study. So they're both heavily involved in the Yazidi community and the community at South London, and they're passionate about advocating for their community and their needs. And they've both volunteered their time to be here today and share their perspective. So I think first and foremost, we're going to hear from our 2 youth. So my first question is for Asia. So a lot of people have come into the center to run different programs for you and your family members. But I want to know what it was like being involved in an activity where someone was specifically interested in hearing your voices, so the voices of the youth, and knowing your perspective on your experiences and what you still need.
Okay, so I was happy and excited to come to this project because I was like really happy because like someone was interested in particularly in me, or like no, they want to know about my
You're
and they
doing
wanted to know about what Yazidi have been through and like my community and stuff since 2014 and all those stuff. So yeah, I was really happy that I was part of this research, and to also like tell you like what Yazidis need till now, like, and they still do need support and all that stuff. So
Thank you so much, Asia. And we were so lucky to have you being a part of this. You all had some really wonderful insight onto what's going on, and what you're still needing. So it was great to hear that directly from you. Thank you so much. Faiza, my next question is for you. So I'm wondering what it was like to be a part of the 3 research activities. So for example, how did it make you feel to share these things and to talk about your experiences? And did you feel like you had some say into how this research was happening and what you were sharing?
Yeah, I was very happy. Like I felt very happy and excited to talk about the Yazidis and to share about them and what the Yazidis been through. I was also very excited that you guys invited me to this program, and I would I would also want to continue as much as you guys want me to, and to talk about the Yazidis all the time. And I really appreciate you guys telling us to talk about the Yazidis, and I want to share everything about the Yazidis and what they've been through.
Thanks, Faiza. And so I know you said like you were really excited to share these things. I'm wondering, was it kind of hard to talk about it too? Because I know these are really, really sensitive and really emotional things that we talked about together.
It was hard for me, but at the same time, I did wanted to talk about the Yazidis, and I felt very sad. But if I'm talking about the Yazidis, it makes me like feel happy to talk about them and remembering them, what they've been through, and it was very hard, but it was okay for me. It was okay.
I'm glad to hear that. And Faiza, did you feel like you had some say into, what message we were sending and how this research was happening? Like, did you feel like you got to have some input into that process?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So I have one last question for the 2 of you, and it's really for both of you. So I'm just wondering what impact you hope this research will have for yourself, and for your community. So what do you hope people will take away as the main message, and what kind of action do you hope will happen?
okay, so I'm gonna be talking first. So like I want the world to know that Yazidis are still suffering from what have happened to them since 2014, and they still do need the support till this day. And I feel like whatever they have been through is still with them. So, and yeah, like we want all the world to know what we've been through, and like all the stuff.
Yeah,
Do
Asya,
something about it.
I think that was kind of the main point of that final frame too, right? Is that you
Yeah.
really
And know, yeah, and know our story, and yeah. And
Thanks, Asya. How about you, Faiza?
I really want to spread awareness that Yazidis are still suffering and still need a lot of support. People are still living in camps back home because their home was destroyed by the ISIS.
I also want to say something about that. So like we here as Yazidis, we do need support, yeah, but like our life is kind of like stable. Like if you talk about home, like we're okay, like but in Iraq, like their camps are not good because they can burn in any time and anywhere. So they do not have enough money to rebuild their houses. So that's the one thing that they need. And so
Yeah. So I think I'm hearing from both of you that like really the support for you who are here is important, but what's really, really important to you is the support for those who are still in Iraq and who are struggling so much.
And they've been through a lot. They're still been through like a lot right now because they're still in the camps, and nobody have supported them like in Iraq. That's why I really want you guys to support them.
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like if they also knew like some English, they could share their story to others. So language could have been one helpful thing in there for them. So yeah,
Yeah, because really they're there and they don't have a way to even
yeah,
happening because they don't speak the language.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for being here, and for being a part of this all from start to finish.
Thank you.
I think you both are so brave, and I appreciate you so much for coming and sharing.
No problem.
So Delvine, just before I dive back, we have one video to watch from Khalida, but since we're already here, maybe I can just ask you quickly, why do you think this research with the youth was needed?
First of all, I want to thank a big thank to South London Resource Center, Neighborhood Resource Center, for helping many Yazidi families, including mine. I came here as a refugee as well myself, and I've been volunteering here since 2016. I came to Canada in 2015, and I've been in the South London Center since then, since I came. I've tried to help many people as I can. I did a lot of volunteering hours and I got awarded for it. I'm still doing it, and eventually I got a job here, still continuing to help them. For the research, thank you very much for doing that. It is a big thing for them. It's such a sensitive subject, but is gonna make a big impact, I believe. I believe this research was needed because we need to know how they're doing and in their daily life since they have arrived to Canada, and we would like to hear back from them to see what kind of support they still need. So this was a big thing, I guess, to hear their voices, their thoughts, any ideas they want us to improve in the settlement services. So I think that's a big thing for them. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Delvine. And one last question for you. I'm just wondering if you've seen any impact from this research that it's had on the youth. So just the process of being a part of it all.
Yeah, I think it made them really happy that their opinion matters and that there are people actually listening to their voices. And most importantly, now they understand that they can have an impact, make an impact on others, basically by spreading awareness. And as today, people are listening to their stories. So that's really good for that.
Absolutely.
Mhm. No problem.
So I'm just going to bring us back to our PowerPoint for one final piece here. So we do have a video from Khalida, who could not join us today. And she's going to be answering both of these questions with me. And then after this, we'll open it up for a Q&A. So I see that there's a couple questions in the chat box already. So please feel free to send some more in if you have them. Great. So Khalida, why do you think this research with the youth was needed?
So to begin, I'm very proud to say actually at SLNRC, we're always from the very beginning when the Yazidis arrived, we've been providing support. And we actually have programs at our agency specifically for Yazidi clients, which other agencies in London do not have. So we've always been there to support. I think this research was a really good idea to do with the Yazidi youth is because we're always looking for feedback from them to see where they need support, what areas we should work on. And they had a lot to share, so that was good.
Yes, they definitely did. And they had a lot of ideas, I think, about, you know, what type of future programming they want for themselves and their moms. So I think getting their perspective was really cool.
I think for them, it was an idea to basically advocate for the community as well. Yeah. So it's not always, oh, I want this or I want that. Mm-hmm. They're always asking, we need this, we need support here, which I love about it. Yeah, you know, it's they're amazing at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And my next question for you is, what do you think the impact was on the youth from participating in doing this research?
I think it was very positive. They love the idea of having a say in what's going to happen. They love the idea that someone was interested and where they need support, which was really good. Usually we do provide programs. We have partners that come to SLNRC and provide programs, but we hardly ever have a chance to actually ask the youth specifically, sit with them and ask them one by one, where do you need the support, or what should we work on? So I think that was a really good idea. They had, like you've seen, they had a lot to share. I've seen how happy they were to be able to be part of the research, so that was great. And they want their word to get out. I've asked quite a few of them, I said, what would you like to come out of this? And they said, we want the public to know who Yazidis are, what they went through, and that we're still here, we still need support.
Yeah. I think that was like such a powerful message at the end of the day, which is what they really wanted to share, right? That was their main priority, I think, in sharing this information, is being able to share it in an even broader way.
Definitely, especially like a lot of our clients that we have here right now, they still have families back home that are still struggling with just everyday life. We still have camps in northern Iraq it's been over 8 years now when the genocide happened, and they're still struggling. We have quite a few clients here now. They have family members that came back from captive. So they're there, the family members here, they're always asking them, what can be done for us? Like, you know, they feel like that the world has turned a blind eye on them. So they feel like nothing is getting done. So for our youth, especially, for them to have someone to ask them, okay, where do you need the support? I felt like they were so happy and they were jumping. They're so ready to answer because they want to get the word out that they need support still.
Yeah. I was really, I think, personally blown away by just how much they had to share on all of the topics and how willing they were to do that. So it was really, I think, a fantastic, from the outside looking in, a fantastic experience.
Yeah. And Charlotte, some of our youth that we have in London right now, they are literally the backbone of their families. I have one youth that her mom keeps saying, she's the reason that I was able to survive and escape captive, because for the 2.5 years that they were in captive, this little girl was going around begging for food for her and her siblings and her mom to be able to survive till they were able to escape. I have another youth that actually was able to escape before her family and went back and saved her mom and her 2 siblings. So these girls are superheroes. And even though, like right now, they've came such a long way, they're doing amazing in school. We have a few of them that actually got accepted into college now. I feel like in the last 5 years, their life has completely changed. But mentally, they still need a lot of support, and we need to be there as settlement agencies and as support workers. They still need us, and I can see that because they're always coming back to the center. Yeah,
and I think that really was evident through this process, right? They were so willing and eager to be engaged and to share, but they had these really powerful and moving messages. So that's obviously a weight that they're still carrying around with them every single day. And I think that does show just how much support is still required.
Yeah. And like what I've noticed, how generous they are, because I never heard one of them ask you, can you do this for me? Or can I have this kind of support? They're always asking for their parents or their mom or the community as a whole, because they're always asking, they're always saying, we're Yazidis. What can you do for Yazidis? We still need support. We want the world to know what happened to us.
Yeah.
They do have a lot of questions still that, growing up, some of them, like basically some of them came to London where they were like, you know, maybe 7, 8 years old, 12 we're looking at now, they're like 15, 16. So I've had quite a few of them ask me, Khalida, why did this happen to us? You as a Yazidi, you know, can you answer? You know, and I'm like, I'm sorry, yes, I wish I had an answer for you, but we really don't know, because we were, you know, as a community, we were targeted for our religion, you know. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you, Khalida, for sharing. That brings us to the end of that video. And I will just quickly turn your attention back to our slides for one moment before we head into the Q&A. So at the end of our slideshow, you will see a slide like this. And on here is the link to the full YouTube video that was created. So it's about 20 minutes long, and we shared different clips of it with you today. But I do encourage you, if you have a few minutes, to save the link and to go back and watch it, because it is really wonderful to see the support being provided to the Yazidis here in London at the South London Neighbourhood Resource Centre, and it gives some great insight into the different programming being provided. We've also just included a clip of the art therapy specifically, which Mohammed had mentioned earlier, and also just some various pictures from the different activities and things that have gone on at the centre. So I won't talk about any of these right now, just for the sake of time, but they're all in here for you to enjoy. Okay, so thank you everybody for listening to our presentation today. And it looks like we have about 4 questions, so we'll try to get to those all in the last 10 minutes here. So the first question says, as Yazidi refugees are mostly youth and mothers, how do you think age and gender specifically play a role in their adjustment to life in Canada? Just so from our research and what I've heard from the youth, I think that the age of the youth in some ways was a positive factor, because I think that they were able to acculturate more quickly and learn the language at a faster rate, especially compared to their mothers. But it's also been a really big challenge, right? Like I think a huge message that the youth were sharing was that it's really hard to have like such a big family and a big family with no father. So this was not only challenging for their mothers, but it also put a lot of responsibility on themselves to help care for their younger siblings and to help run the households. So I think that that's one way it's really impacted their adjustment. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that.
I would say something about it.
Yeah,
as for the ladies that came with the kids that don't have men with them, it was really hard for them, because back in Iraq, they really don't know the responsibility out of the house. So this was a new thing for them. Getting in the community and be like, oh, you're the head of the house, you're gonna have to do everything. As back home, they were just in the house, the man would do everything outside. So it was a big change for them to actually get used to.
Yeah, thanks, Delvine. So our next question was, did we find any differences between Yazidi youth and their experiences of adjustment to life in Canada? So for example, based on like their gender or their demographic differences. Our research didn't specifically look at this question, but I think if we're just reflecting kind of informally on this, yeah, I think like all the youth had their own unique experiences, right? Like some of them they all experienced a lot of trauma, but some of them like particularly had really challenging stories that they shared about, you know, family members being taken into captivity and them escaping and things like that. So I think, you know, their individual unique experience absolutely has impacted their adjustment to life in Canada. And so did their family circumstances. So some of these families are still whole and intact, while others are not. So some individuals have their fathers here and all their siblings, and others don't. So I think that those things have all impacted their adjustment. But overall, I would say a lot of them were sharing these same messages that we've shared with you today. So there was a lot of individual differences, but there was also a ton of overlap in everybody's experience of how challenging and difficult this has been, and the deep impact it continues to have. Does anybody else want to add to that? Okay. Our next question says, thank you, Faiza and Asia, for sharing your research participation experiences. Creating a safe space for participants to share their experiences is crucial. And this has made them intrigued in the value of the university community collaborations and arts-based research projects. So this is a question for all the panelists. How do we believe the community partnership and arts-based research benefit immigration and settlement research as a whole? I think that Mohammed and Jason touched on some of these pieces in their introduction, right? By combining these two pieces, we're able to bring in kind of the knowledge of the literature and the evidence-based approaches to what is actually being needed in the community by having this partnership. So we're really able to inform the work that each other is doing to benefit the communities directly. And I think the arts-based research, this was my first experience doing it, but I thought it was really great. Like it just provides a different way for people to share their experiences that's not so dependent on language or talking about the things directly. It gives them some prompts and some other ways to share that. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on any of that.
Well, we could say a lot about this area, and thank you, Charlotte, for your wonderful collaboration, and Professor Jason's also guidance. The environment that was, I could say, created a welcoming environment at our center, bringing together so many partners, making sure that the Yazidi youth, children, moms, dads, and all are looked into their issues in a holistic manner. We made sure through our extensive work with the Yazidis in creating programming that all have, I could say, a voice, but not as strong as we have seen from the youth that you have worked with. They might come individually and ask specific questions, and then we try to find out how we could bring up something that is useful and creates more impact and encouragement. And so this is a unique, I think, situation where our Yazidi communities have had contacts with other jurisdictions, and I feel that what has happened in London for the Yazidis, I wish this experience that we could consider as a very good or best practice in really implementing one aspect of the work that made your research to be successful, that we had three wonderful people. Initially started with Melvin James, who was herself a social worker, and then joined by Khalida, who has a very good connection with not just the Yazidis who come to the center, but also having been well-established Yazidi family in London for a long time, has all the the connections and wonderful relationship that's built for the whole Yazidi. Recently, for example, she has invited the spiritual, you could say, mentor of the Yazidis, who is worldwide known, came to London and spoke to the families on how they connect to the communities and raise their children and so forth. So we didn't just look in, and we created so much environment for them at the center where they could have their own festivals, their own time, and all the programs are actually they're the ones who have asked for, whether it is and I can't I mean, we could talk a lot about especially those volunteers who come through CMHA and continuously been supporting the moms that really required more support through the women empowerment project. And luckily we have in London those kind of individuals who are compassionate to do and before inviting even any other agency, we sit with them, and also we make sure that all their services are tailored to the individuals, the communities there. So we can talk a lot about this, but definitely the video also will highlight some of the areas that we have that the person who has questioned. And I would like to thank the people who really asked these questions. It shows that the world is there, that people are also would like to know more about the Yazidis.
Absolutely. So there's a couple questions left. I know we are kind of reaching the end of the presentation, so if anybody needs to leave, please feel free to do so. And we will try to stick around to answer these last couple questions. So someone had asked for the link to the video. I did type that response in. So under the Q&A tab, under the answered questions, anyone can access that link if you'd like to copy and paste it from there. Somebody's asking about what kind of support can be provided to Yazidi family members in Iraq, and how do we advocate for them and their resettlement in Canada? So I think like this is a really loaded question, and we could probably talk about it forever. But I think like something that the youth have mentioned, right, is like they need support to relocate some of these individuals. So when Canada initially resettled like just over 1,000 refugees, that was about 5 years ago. And there's been no big movement like that since. So I think that that's one area where we can take some really manageable action. In terms of advocating for them, I think a lot of people just are not aware of what's going on in Iraq and that this is still ongoing. I know I myself was not aware of, the depth of all of this before I began working with this population. So I think just making sure that we're continuing to have these conversations and to get this message out there and to share this, as often as we can is really important, because the more people who know, the more people who can do something to support them. And in terms of the resettlement specifically here in Canada, I think, listening to the youth and the members of the community about what it is they're saying they need. So as service providers, I think it's really important not for us to make assumptions about what kind of support they're needing, but to listen directly to what the community is telling us.
And also I may add, Charlotte, I mean, the voice that is the voice of the youth is now, I'm sure it will spread through this video because this conference will be recorded, and the whole conference, as well as our organization, is funded by IRCC. They will be very much interested to know about this research, and it's so rest assured, these faces, I've seen them growing in our community, and I just want to make sure that their voice is heard. And thank you for taking the courage, and the time to come and speak on behalf of the youth and the Yazidi community. You will be a very strong voice for your community, I'm sure, and you have done it, and you will succeed in this journey. It's not simple, but it's going to be a tough one. But you have the you have the power to do that, I'm sure, as young people.
Absolutely. Our next question, our second last question, just said, thank you everyone for such a great presentation. They really enjoyed hearing about the work we've been doing. And somebody was asking me that they said they were curious if I have any thoughts on how I might navigate the process of hearing about the difficult experiences of Yazidi youth as an outsider, someone who hasn't had those experiences. And I think there's lots of components to this question. I think, you know, it's been really hard as somebody, as an outsider, hearing these stories and really immersing myself in what's happening for this community. But I also think that that's really important, right? There's a lot of discomfort that comes with hearing everything that they've had to share, but that is, you know, a sign that we really need to do more to support them and their community. And I think really the most important piece for me every step of the way has just been to really honor very specifically what they're sharing with me. So to make sure that as I reflect this in our research and I get this message out there, that I'm using the words of the youth and sharing exactly the message that they're wanting to share, because I really see myself as just really the facilitator of this research. I'm just the person who's getting the information from point A to point B and disseminating it out there. And our last question is for you, Mohammed. So they said, awesome talk, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Mohammed, I'm sorry if I missed this, but I'm curious about the 360-degree support approach. Why is it titled as 360-degree support? And how is it unique in supporting Yazidi refugees compared to other approaches used in the past?
Yeah, when we were approached by ILCC, that the community will receive Yazidis directly from Iraq to London and many other places. So the minister came to our community center to meet a family, a single woman with 9 children who has arrived. And I'm sure, like any other resident, and whether it's in the government or in the community, they will get you know, they will scratch their head, you know, how are we going to do, what are we going to do with this? But we had just a year or two before that, we welcomed hundreds of Syrians. And we worked together with the whole community in London in order to what we called, you know, Hello London project, that we brought together all agencies, whether settlement and non-settlement agencies, including the London Health Sciences, etc., that eventually was evaluated by Professor Jason and his team. And so we had that experience of bringing together ideas and partners, etc. So the first thing that we did, okay, this is unique group that just moved quickly, and mainly mostly women, and with many children. So this requires, we'll have to put our heads together. And that we shouldn't leave any stone unturned. We will check on all aspects of their needs. We read the literature that the Canadian government has done about the Yazidis and other researchers. And then we thought, as you mentioned, there are so many areas that they require support. So our strategy, first thing, is to make sure that we reach out to the community through those who are well established, and as well as with individuals who happen to come and live besides within the area of South London. And so the first ideas that we put together to ILCC is this: you need not abandon these people. They need all the support, immediate. And so ILCC was flexible, and they loved the idea that we provide this comprehensive support, whether they are in the schools, in the community, whether they need to be directed to the hospitals or get all the kinds of supports. We did our part, and we made sure that others also. We just want to mention here one doctor who is a wonderful Dr. Henderson, who really was very supportive and understanding of the impact that how especially the women were impacted while their husbands were massacred and killed. So this project was supported by RCC, and at one point I was invited by the House of Commons to talk about the importance of fully engage and support the Yazidis. And it was bipartisan. All the branches of the government and the parties, they were all in agreement that we need to support this. And we said, okay, we need to support them, but we shouldn't abandon them. We need to have folks on the ground who will really work with them. And we are lucky that we have wonderful staff who have really delivered so many things. And we are observing how they are moving with their lives and feeling independence. What all the time comes is, what about our folks who are there still in Iraq? What's happening to them? Who is going to help them? We are here. We got so much support. We learned, we studied. We were able to succeed to a large extent. So that was the overall holistic and support that we have provided. And at times we have not done this where we involve all our settlement workers, whether it's a person who would sit with them, as a settlement council and creating settlement plans for them, or those who are doing all kinds of connections and build their capacity in different areas, doing cooking, knitting, or sports or music, or others who will make sure that the students in the schools are supported through our settlement workers in the schools. So and COVID time come, we were the ones that were there to make sure that they have the information and the support that they need. So we will continue, hopefully. And as we also settled, a lot of them are moving from other provinces. We feel that they still need a lot of support, as well as some of them are coming also as in a family class or sponsorship through private organizations. So our support that initially started at 360 now is less, is kind of 180 degrees because a lot of them have moved forward. And I'm glad to see some of them are also working full-time, and we know some of them are working even 2 jobs. The housing crisis, like any other residents, they're having difficulty with housing, they're having difficulty with family doctors, but they are fully supported in our community.
Awesome. Thank you, Mohammed. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. I just really want to thank everybody who tuned in and who listened, and everybody who's going to be listening after the fact. And most importantly, I want to thank our 2 youth and Delvine for being here today and sharing their perspective with us. It's much appreciated.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte.